At Christmas, my sister tried to poison me out of jealousy. She handed me a glass from our mother's collection. "Here's to us," she said, tapping the rim. The cranberry fizz reflected in the Christmas lights like rubies. I took a sip and tasted something wrong. Too sweet at first, then a sharp minty flavor that didn't at all resemble fruit or ginger ale. "Mara," I asked, rolling the drink over my tongue, "since when have you been adding something new to our cocktails?" She laughed. "Since you started falling asleep before dessert." Her voice was light, but her eyes were not. Around us, the living room hummed with carols and sparkled with lights, my grandchildren arguing over the last chocolate coin. Mara slid onto the arm of my chair, close enough to brush a strand of my hair, close enough that I could smell the wintergreen on her wrist. My chest warmed, then trembled. A slow heaviness spread through my body. The room shifted slightly to the left. "You look pale," she said, already lifting the glass to my lips. "One more sip and you'll rest." I set the glass down on the coaster, carefully, as if it weighed more than the glass. "I don't want any more." Her lips pressed together. "Don't be dramatic. It's Christmas." A minute later, my tongue went numb. The words had to fight. "What did you put in there?" "Nothing." She'd held my pulse too long. "Your blood pressure is acting up again." To my daughter, she called, "The blanket is for Mommy. She needs to lie down." I watched as she pushed my glass back into the center, out of reach. My grandchildren's laughter sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. Somewhere in the haze, a clear, cold question flashed. How could my own sister do this to me? I'm 72, Mara 68. We know each other's giveaways. When she lies, the corners of her mouth don't move. When I'm angry, my hands freeze. They're still now, folded over the hem of my red dress. She thought she'd finally found a way to make me small, smaller than the promotion she never got, smaller than the house I kept after my mother died, smaller than the attention my children give to Grandma when she shows up. I closed my eyes and breathed through the dizziness, counting the heartbeats the doctor taught me. Mara had no idea that I'd noticed the missing bottle of pills in her purse last week. She had no idea that the cup she'd pressed into my palm wasn't the one I'd planned to keep. I came to Christmas prepared in a way she wouldn't notice until it was too late. But to understand how it all happened, I have to go back to the beginning. When our mother died, Mara and I were kneeling on the thin carpet of the law office, passing a damp handkerchief back and forth the way we'd done when we were kids. The will had been simple. The house would go to both of us, and the savings would be split evenly. I was 59 then, Mara 55. I had 2 grown children and a husband who still packed my lunches. She had a string of jobs that looked elegant on paper, but were empty in the checking account. I said we should keep the house until the market warmed up. Mara said we should sell it immediately and let the energy out, as if grief were a trapped bird that could be flung out of the window. We compromised. I bought her share. The price was fair. The notary smiled. We hugged by the curb. She never forgave me. I didn't understand it then, the way resentment burrows into the hem of love's dress and gnaws at it. I understand now. Arthur died 2 winters later. A heart attack so polite that it hit once and left him lying on the kitchen floor with his hands folded in prayer. After the funeral, the line for the casseroles thinned, the silence grew, and Mara began to appear with advice. "You shouldn't be alone in a big house," she would say, looking at the framed photographs as if they were certificates she might earn. "You need a plan." I recognized the weight of that word, plan. It sounded like a blanket but felt like a leash. She also brought pills, samples from a friend at the health consultancy, and teas that promised rest. "You look tired," she'd mutter, sorting through my mail as if the envelopes belonged to her fingers. You forget your keys more often. When I found that my gas burner had been left on twice after she'd cooked, I called it grief. When I missed 2 checks on the back of my book, I called it my mistake. The day I slipped on oil at the top of the stairs and banged my shoulder on the banister and it hurt for a year, I called it a warning. I began to write things down. Not a diary. That's for feelings. A ledger is for facts. Every visit, every suggestion that I sell, every miracle vitamin she pressed into my palm. I also bought a brooch at an estate sale, a cheerful gold daisy with a tiny black eye. My neighbor's grandson had set the lens and taught me which tap recorded, which tap stopped. It was a silly toy for an old woman, he joked, patting my shoulder. I fastened it to sweaters and learned to aim my chest at the world. In October, Mara left her purse open on my kitchen counter while she stepped into the yard to take a call. The bottle of painkillers inside wore the name of a woman neither of us knew. Half the tablets were gone. I took a picture with my phone, the label crooked through the magnifier, a benzodiazepine, prescribed to a stranger. I slid the bottle back where it had been and began to move my accounts. November brought an invitation to brunch at Mara's apartment. I arrived to find her son Ethan, 40, nervous, checking his watch. There was a third place set. "For my lawyer," she said, handing me a mimosa with an orange slice so perfect it could have been painted. "He can help you streamline, Evie. We're all getting older." "How generous," I said, watching the bubbles break on the surface of my drink. "What are we streamlining?" "Your worries," she said, and for the first time I saw the outline of the machine she'd been building. I excused myself to the bathroom, poured the mimosa into the sink, and watched it whirl away like a little party giving up. When I returned, her lawyer had arrived with soft hands and a briefcase that clicked like a metronome. He had printed forms I had never asked for. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, a guardianship petition in case of emergency. He spoke slowly, as if I were hard of hearing or heart. Ethan didn't meet my eyes. I didn't sign. I smiled instead, the smile mothers learn when their children are lying about the broken lamp. "This is a lot to consider," I said, gathering the pages. "Let me take them home." I scanned every sheet that afternoon, sent copies to a safe address I kept for emergencies, then tucked the originals in the hollow Arthur had carved under the basement stairs when he hid Christmas presents. The next day, I made an appointment with my doctor. I asked for a thorough checkup and a letter in my file stating that I was competent, lucid, and unlucky only in the category of sisters. "You are more than competent," Dr. Patel said, pressing his warmth into my wrist, "and you are not alone." He gave me his cell number and a look that said he meant it. I wrote down the date and the time on my ledger and drew a tiny daisy next to it. December arrived with a weather report that sounded like a threat. The wind sharpened. The world smelled like pennies. I planned Christmas carefully, the way women plan meals when they're raising children and keeping books and hiding bruises, to the minute and the inch, with no room for accidents that are not accidents. I set the table a day early, each place with a different coaster I had stitched myself. Mara's was a piece of old linen with a pale blue thread woven through. I had dabbed a transparent dye on the napkin ring that would glow under a UV flashlight, the kind my grandson used to hunt scorpions in the desert one summer. I placed my chair by the tree and angled the brooch toward the drinks cart, and I bought 2 sets of identical cut glass tumblers, scratching a fingernail-width notch under the lip of one. Christmas morning, my house woke up like a hymn. Claire arrived first, cheeks raw from the cold, carrying a tin of her ginger snaps. David followed with his wife, Mina, and the children, whose coats smelled of wool and excitement. The living room filled with the music of paper ripping, cousins whispering secrets, my son, David calling for someone to hand him the screwdriver, please. I ladled soup, I cracked jokes I had earned, and I watched the door. Mara swept in with a tinier tree ornament than the year before, a glass ballerina poised in a perpetual curtsy, and a new perfume with a wintergreen top note that made my tongue feel like it had been brushed with frost. She kissed my cheek with a mouth that didn't move. "Beautiful, Evie," she said, looking around as if a camera crew was about to burst from my hall closet. Ethan trailed her with a platter, eyes rimmed red. "Long night?" I asked. He nodded, shame pooling under his lashes. After the roast, after the jokes, after the children compared bruises from sledding, Mara took command of the drinks cart like a captain. "Let me mix," she said, lifting the bottle. "To us." She built the cranberry spritzers with a precision that would have passed any inspection. A splash, a stir, a garnish like a small wreath, and then, tiny as a fly landing, something fell from her sleeve into my glass. The brooch would later replay it frame by frame. Her wrist angling, the shake, the second shake when the first crumb clung to the rim, the quick sweep of her eyes left and right. She handed me the tumbler with both hands. I felt the weight of the cut glass in my palm and the notch under the lip against my finger, the signal to my own animal mind that has said, "This is the one." You know the rest of that moment. My sip, the taste that didn't belong, my refusal, the thud of my heart against the bars of its cage. What you don't know is that I had texted Dr. Patel the night before. "If I call with 3 dots," I wrote, "I need you to come. Bring the small light and the test kit if you still have it." He had lost his aunt to a caregiver who loved her a little too much with pills. He understood how to fight kindness that harms. Now I excused myself to the restroom, steady enough to make it look like age, not alarm. I set the glass on the marble, pressed my lips to the rim for a second longer than necessary to leave what a lawyer would call evidence, and poured a thin stream into a labeled vial from my knitting basket. I set the vial next to the toothpaste where a woman would find it and rinsed the sink. Then I sent Dr. Patel the 3 dots. He lived 4 houses down. He answered with a single period. "Coming." Back in the living room, Mara had rearranged the scene. "She needs to lie down," she announced, tucking a blanket that I had knitted around my legs so tightly my knees knocked. Claire hovered, alarm in her mouth. "Mom," she whispered, "are you okay?" "I'm a little dizzy," I said. The room did tilt. Whatever Mara had sprinkled did its work, just slower than she intended. I counted my breaths and kept my eyes soft. Mara kept reaching for the glass, as if to shepherd it to safety. "Let me freshen this," she said. "No," I answered, and held her gaze until I saw her blink. When the doorbell rang, David went to get it, and there stood Dr. Patel with a tin of sweets and a neighborly smile. "I was in the neighborhood," he said. "Brought lad deuce." He looked at me, not at my sister, and I felt the rope around my chest loosen. "Come in," Claire said, relief breaking from her like a tide. "Mom's dizzy." "Mm-hmm." He set the tin down, bent to me, and took my pulse, then my glass. He sniffed and frowned. "What is this?" "Cranberry spritzer," Mara said, stepping forward pert. "Maybe her blood sugar is low." "It tastes odd," he said, and you would have thought the glass had offended him. He slipped a small paper strip from his pocket and dabbed it into the damp on the rim, then checked the strip under the light of his phone. "Bitterness," he murmured, showing me the faint purple bloom. "And a sedative, maybe. Did you make this?" "I did," Mara said, arms folding like gates. "Is something wrong with my recipe?" "We're going to the hospital," he said to me, businesslike. "Now." "Over a drink?" Mara laughed, but it sounded like a fork dropped on a plate. "Over intent," he said, and that was when I saw her flinch. Claire came alive then, her daughter voice becoming soldier clean. "David? The car? Mina? Blankets? Mom, can you stand?" I can. I stood slowly and handed the glass to Dr. Patel. Put that somewhere safe, I said. Maybe in my room. Mara blocked him. I'll take it, she blurted. It's messy. Don't touch it. My voice came out steady, winter cold. Everyone looked at me, even the children, who had fallen silent without knowing why. Dr. Patel carried the glass to my bedroom, and I learned later slipped it into a plastic bag he kept for emergencies. He also found the vial on the sink, a tiny river of red waiting for its name. When he returned to the living room, Mara was suggesting a narrative. She gets flustered lately. I told her to cut her pills in half. She mixed the bottles once. I felt the anger rise like a clean flame, and with it, a hard clarity. Enough, I said. Ethan, would you get my brooch? He blinked. The daisy, I said gently. Take it off and bring it here. He hesitated. Mara's hand shot out and pinched his sleeve. He flinched like a boy. Ethan. My voice softened. Please. He obeyed. He unclasped the brooch, brought it to me, and I tapped it twice on the arm of my chair. The tiny light winked. Claire, I said, would you plug my laptop into the TV? What on earth are you doing? Mara's laugh broke. Showing the family our Christmas movie. I had practiced this on my own, a woman rehearsing for a play she hoped would never open. The video pulled up as clean as a holiday special. My living room in a wide shot, the drinks cart close enough to make the cuts of the glass look like snow. And there, in a red sweater with a cowl neck and a smile like a painting, my sister, mixing, stirring, tapping her sleeve, the little fleck falling, her finger tracing the rim as if smoothing lipstick. Then her hands, both of them, offering the glass to me the way someone offers a ring. No one spoke. Mara's face moved through 4 seasons in a breath. She settled on early spring, wet and ready to bloom a lie. That proves nothing, she said. That could be anything. Maybe, I said, but we'll let other eyes decide. I nodded to Dr. Patel, who took out the small UV flashlight and passed it over the drinks cart. The handle of the bottle she had poured from glowed with a delicate blue thread. My dye, transferred from the napkin ring I had placed at her spot. He swept the light over Mara's hands. Her left palm lit up with constellations. Fireworks, my grandson breathed. Soap residue, Mara said quickly, from the bathroom. Your bathroom has stars? David asked, blunt as ever. It would have been enough, but envy hates a neat ending. It claws for one more act. Mara lunged, not at me, but at the laptop. She grabbed for the cord. Ethan reached without thinking to steady the screen, and the two of them froze, mother and son locked in a photograph. Don't, Ethan said, eyes on the image of his mother's hands. His voice shook. Please, Mom. I was helping her, Mara rasped. She isn't well. I know exactly how well I am, I answered, and I know exactly what you are. We went to the hospital anyway. I let the paramedics fuss and clip and tape. I let the fluorescent lights do their harsh kind of truth-telling. Dr. Patel handed over the glass and the vial. The nurse labeled them with numbers and letters, neat as prayers. Claire rode with me. In the cab of the ambulance, she gripped my hand so tightly I felt the grooves of her wedding ring. How long? She asked. Long enough, I said. I didn't want to believe what I could see. She swallowed. I didn't either. At midnight, when the children were asleep in my bed and the monitor had learned my every sigh, Detective Serena Kovacs arrived. She was late 40s and tired in the way of women who carry 2 lives at once, one in a badge and one in their bones. She introduced herself with a small nod and a legal pad. Tell me what we're looking at, she said. Don't spare me. I told her. The ledger, the purse, the brunch with the lawyer, the guardianship forms, the blue dye on the napkin ring, the brooch with the eye that didn't blink. She listened like a doctor listens to a heartbeat, head tilted, pencils still. When I finished, she asked for the brooch. I held it out, surprised at the grief of parting with something that had become a friend. "We'll need copies," she said. "We'll also need to talk to your sister." "She's probably at my house," I said, trying to wash away the stars. Kovach's mouth flicked. "We already sent a squad car," she said. "We protected the scene as soon as the ER called." "What happens now?" Claire asked. "Now we split holidays," the detective said dryly and closed her pad. "I'll be in touch." I was sent home the next afternoon with a bottle of water and a paper stating that I had ingested a sedative in a dosage inconsiderate to life. The hospital toxicologist had written the name of the likely drug on the corner of the page. I folded it under so I wouldn't have to say it out loud. I was alive because I had been cautious, and because Mara had been impatient. A week later, on a day that brightened and then went dark like a child playing with the light switch, Detective Kovacs called. "We're moving on this," she said. "Toxicology confirms. Your glass held residue of a benzodiazepine crushed with a non-prescribed pain reliever. The vial contained enough to sedate a person half your size. Your sister's fingerprints are on the tablet fragments. There's the video, there's the dye, there are the earlier documents from her lawyer." She paused. She also filed an emergency petition for guardianship the morning of Christmas Eve. Hearing was scheduled for the 27th. The hearing. The word hit me like cold water. I had not told my children about that piece. Shame is a private animal. "She wanted you to be sleepy and confused in front of a judge," Kovacs added, not unkindly. "She wanted a paper to say she loved you more than you loved yourself." "What will happen to her?" I asked. "We're preparing charges," she said. "Attempted poisoning, elder abuse, fraud if we can make it. It won't be easy, but it will be thorough." After we hung up, I made tea and watched the steam write and rewrite itself in the kitchen air. Then I called Ethan. He answered on the fourth ring, voice small. "Aunt Evie?" "Come over," I said. Alone. He came in his father's old coat, the one with the frayed cuffs. He sat at my table and didn't take his hands out of his pockets, like a boy who had stolen an apple and was ashamed of taking only one. "I'm sorry," he blurted. "I should have done something. I swear I didn't know she would—" He broke, hands over his face. "I know," I said. "You didn't drop the pill. You didn't mix the drink. But you stood in the room." I kept my voice gentle. "That's still a kind of doing." He nodded, shuddering. "She's always been like this," he whispered, "since Grandpa left and told her she wasn't his favorite." He glanced up at me, cheeks blotched. "She said she was rescuing you." "From what?" "From yourself." He flinched at his own words. We were quiet for a long breath. Outside, a plow passed, groaning like a whale. "Ethan," I said, "the police will talk to you. They'll ask what you saw. Don't lie for her. Don't lie for me. Tell the truth, like it's water and you need it." He met my eyes. "Will you hate me if I testify?" "I'll hate what you saw," I said. "Not the seeing." He nodded, shoulders softening. When he rose to leave, he touched the brooch, now sitting in a teacup on the table. "She used to love daisies," he said, voice far away. "When we were little, she'd braid them into my hair." He laughed once, without joy. She cut them up the next day. The hearing on the 27th became a different kind of performance. Mara appeared in a gray suit that whispered money she did not have. Hair sleek, eyes bright with innocence. Her lawyer was the same man with soft hands. I wore my good navy coat and the brooch, which had been returned to me long enough to feel like armor. Claire sat on my left, David on my right, Mina behind, with a file folder of copies. Dr. Patel waited outside to be called. The judge was a woman my age with a mouth that understood the bitterness of certain recipes. Mara's petition was read aloud. The words were tidy and terrifying. Confusion, memory lapses, kitchen fires, unsafe driving. Most could be true if you bent them hard enough. A few had been manufactured whole cloth. Then Detective Kovacs laid my ledger on the bench as if setting bread to rise. She produced the guardianship packet with the sticky fingerprints. She played the video. The courtroom made a sound like a sigh and a cough at once. Mara's lawyer objected and was overruled. Dr. Patel testified to what he'd observed. My vitals, the strip, the residue. The toxicologist read the toxicology report. Ethan stood and, with his hands clenched as if holding birds, told the truth. When it was my turn, I spoke simply. I raised 2 children on a teacher's salary and a husband's patience, I said. I paid my bills. I learned the ugly math of loss. I keep my receipts. I nodded at the ledger. I also love my sister. My voice cracked on the last word, traitor that it is. Love doesn't erase what you see. It makes you write it down. Mara stared at me with a look I didn't recognize. It wasn't hatred exactly. It was hunger. The judge denied the petition with a ruling I have since memorized without trying. She also issued a temporary protective order. Mara was not to contact me, come to my house, or speak to my children. She ordered law enforcement to proceed. When the gavel fell, it sounded like a lid on a pot that had boiled too long. I expected grief to overwhelm me. What came was steadiness. I walked out into the bright, brittle afternoon and felt my spine remember how to hold me. In the parking lot, Ethan leaned against a lamppost, crying into gloved hands. I put a palm on his back. You did the right thing, I said. That's harder than any of us admit. The months that followed were a study in patience. Investigations are not like television. They move at the speed of paper. I tended my house. I saw my grandchildren. I went to a senior center where women my age learned Tai Chi and how to say no without apology. I took a course in fraud prevention and learned that the most dangerous criminals often share your face. Mara moved out of her apartment. Ethan told me she had pawned jewelry, sold furniture, told friends she was the victim of a smear. She sent me 3 letters in a hand I knew better than my own. The police read them first. They were a braid of apology and accusation. She was sorry I had misunderstood her. She was sorry I had turned the children against her. She was sorry I had made her do this. I placed them in the ledger and added dates. The arraignment was in March, the trial set for June. I did not want a trial, not in the way one wants a birthday. I wanted a world where sisters don't try to erase sisters. But we live in the world we earn and the world we inherit. I wore my navy coat again, and the daisy brooch, which had by then taken on the sheen of a medal given to me by a country made of women. The prosecution was careful and plain. They did not paint Mara as a monster. They painted her as ordinary, which is worse. They showed the video. They presented the forensic reports. They called her lawyer, who admitted to printing forms without my request. He said he had been told I wanted relief. He did not say from what. Mara's defense tried a familiar angle. I was forgetful. I was paranoid. The video was misleading. The dye could be from nail polish. The pills were for her back. They suggested I had staged the whole thing to punish her for something I wouldn't name. I named it when it was my turn. She resented me because I could keep what she could not, I said. Money, a marriage, a temper, the house that had our mother's breath in the curtains. She wanted to be the savior in a story where there was no burning building. I looked at the jurors. at the woman with the knitted shawl and the man with the careful hair. She decided to light a match anyway. The twist, when it came, did not arrive with fireworks. It slid into court on sensible shoes. A woman named Lourdes took the stand. She was the true owner of the name on the pill bottle. She had been Mara's neighbor years ago. She had checked her medicine cabinet one night and found her prescription missing, then found it again in a different bottle with a label she didn't recognize. She had assumed she was forgetful. She wasn't. She had called the police when she saw Mara on the news. There were other neighbors. A toxicologist who remembered Mara's visits with cash. A bank teller who had filed a report when Mara tried to withdraw funds from my account with a note written, "By me." The case became what greed always becomes when sunlight hits it, ugly and obvious. The jury deliberated less than a day. They returned with a verdict that tasted like metal in my mouth. Guilty on attempted poisoning, guilty on elder abuse, guilty on fraud. The judge sentenced her to a term that meant she would miss several winters and a spring. She ordered restitution for the forensic costs and court fees. She encouraged counseling in a voice that had its own kind of mercy. People ask if I forgave her. Forgiveness is a word that's been dragging chains for centuries. It means too many things. I don't wish her harm in her cell. I wish her mirror worked. I wish she had chosen differently, at 100 small turns. My revenge, if you want to call it that, did not end at the courthouse. It continued in a series of signatures that placed my house and savings in a trust for my grandchildren, with a clause that gifts were to be paid in time, not money. Hours logged reading to children at the library, meals delivered to elders whose doorbells had stopped ringing. Claire and David helped me set it up. We named it after my mother, who did the best she could with the tools she had, which is sometimes all any of us can say. I sold the drinks cart and the set of tumblers to a young couple who liked vintage things and didn't ask about the notch under the lip. I kept the brooch, although I rarely wear it now. Its eye has seen enough. Some days I let it sit on a saucer by the window, looking out at the yard where the kids build forts in summer and snowmen in winter. The daisy catches the light and throws little suns on the wall. Ethan and I have coffee once a month. He tells me about his new job at the hardware store, about the woman he is seeing who rescues dogs too big for apartments. We sit on a bench outside when the weather allows, and sometimes he cries, quietly, the way men cry when they have run out of places to put their loyalty. I let him. The relief of it is a gift neither of us mentions. Last week, a letter arrived from the prison where my sister wears a uniform the color of rain. I opened it because I am still the girl who believes the next page will fix the story. It didn't. She wrote that the woman in the mirror had failed her, that I had betrayed her before she betrayed me, that no one could understand how wrong the world was except for us, and I had chosen the wrong side. At the bottom, she drew a daisy with a black dot in the middle. The dot bled through the paper. I folded the letter into the ledger. I wrote the date. Then I made myself a cranberry spritzer with ginger ale and a squeeze of lime, and I took it to the front porch where the light was soft. I lifted my glass to the tree across the street, where a pair of squirrels chased each other like notes on a staff. "To us," I whispered, meaning the women who keep their receipts, who learn the difference between a plan and a trap, who hold their own pulse and wait for the cavalry, and sometimes are the cavalry. I took a sip. It tasted like winter and clarity. If there is a lesson, people ask for those, like recipes. I suppose it is this. People tell you what they are doing to you long before they do it. They call it love. They call it help. They call it for your own good. Believe your eyes. Believe your heart when it knocks. And keep a ledger, not because you plan to take someone to court, but because memory is a house with many attics and doors that stick in damp weather. Write it down. At Easter, we set the table again. The children folded napkins into rabbit ears and argued over jelly beans. Dr. Patel came with ladoos and a twinkle my grandchildren mistook for magic. Detective Kovacs stopped by when her shift ended, slipped into a chair, and ate a slice of lamb with bear joy. We toasted with water and tea and spritzers I made while someone else watched. The windows were open, the curtains breathed. When someone asked for a story, how Nana saved Christmas, I shook my head. Another time, I said, this is the part where we live. But if you want the beginning, the hard, glittering hook, you already know it. On Christmas, my sister tried to poison me because envy is patient and family knows where to aim. What you didn't know, until now, is that I was ready. That is the other secret envy never learns. It thinks it is the only one making a plan.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.